drought is our drought record. We saw the conditions that I showed you earlier, but look, we really paled in comparison to some of the conditions we saw in the 30s and 50s. Again, getting back to my point that we seem to get in that situation much quicker. So I think maybe we're experiencing the drought of record because of changes we've seen on the landscape. Additional sedimentation, we've increased demands, our stream flows are different, and so I think that the drought of record is somewhat of an innocuous, ambiguous goal that we aspire to. I don't consider that's reality. Why? Well, precipitation is going up, that should be good news, but I think we're getting it in weirder events. We seem to be getting these extremes that we're seeing. We get a big flood event followed by a long dry spell. Average is probably just a number you get when you're swinging from a flood to a drought. It's not really what you experience normal, it just happens to be a number. Temperature is the same deal, and I think this is probably a larger culprit on some of the issues we're facing, especially with our surface supplies with evaporation, increased demands. It's just that gradual increase in temperature that we're experiencing. Putting it on a bigger scale in terms of time, we look back 113 years on the drought records we have, precipitation records, stream gauge information. I think we were in a pretty wet cycle in that century. You go back and look at some of these gaps in the 1500s, look at this gap from about 1436 to 1472. They're talking about 3 decades of drought. This according to tree ring data and paleoclimate information that we've obtained for Kansas, looking at the Palmer Drought Severity Index and applying that back in time. This would suggest that we ain't seen nothing yet. Thank God it rained. Kind of giving us this intermission from drought that we're in right now. Lake levels look much better. If I had showed you this graphic a few months ago, here's 0. This means the lake is full, normal elevation. As you go below, like for example, Cedar Bluff is almost 25 feet below normal conservation pool, Webster 22, so on. All of these were below normal pool back this spring. Now we have many of our reservoirs in the flood pool. We're actually releasing flood water from Cheney. Look at John Redmond. You'll hear about John Redmond here in a second. Right now we're 17 feet in flood pool and holding it because we don't want to flood the Neosho River Valley downstream. So one of the things that we're trying to do, and this is kind of more of a what are we going to do about it, is we've got to take care of our storage. Whether we're storing it underground or we're storing it in a reservoir, we've got to take care of that storage. We've got 5 or 6 reservoirs that are 30% or more supplies lost to sediment. These are hard to read, I know. I need to change those, but Tuttle Creek, Toronto is out farther right. Here is John Redmond, which I'm pointing to, I'm going to talk about in a second. Canopolis, Fall River, etc. Reservoirs back this way, not so bad. El Dorado, Cheney, less than 10% sediment deposition right now. But we're more focused on these reservoirs out here where we've lost significant volumes of sediment. We have about 1.5 million acre-feet of storage in these reservoirs that the state operates. About 600,000 of that is future storage available, but every day goes by we lose some of that to sediment. So what I'm going to talk to you about the rest of the way here is some of our efforts to try to change that, reduce that, and reduce sediment deposition. Our water supply customer base, and this includes Wichita and El Dorado, which we don't have a direct interest in terms of the state of Kansas, but we included in some of our information where 2/3 of the state of Kansas is backed up either or is backed up by a reservoir or it has a reservoir as a direct source of supply. So you can see the western or the eastern, virtually the eastern half of the state is dependent upon reservoirs. So is our power production. 60% of the power produced in Kansas is either directly or indirectly tied to a reservoir as far as cooling water is concerned. The scene on the lower end of the Maritime, Wolf Creek, the nuclear plant on the Neosho, and then there are several on the Kansas River, including Jeffrey, Tecumseh, and so on. All of them require reservoir water at times to cooling. So what's the big deal about it? So if you got plenty of it, and yeah, we're losing some of it to sediment, well, you start applying demand projections to some of these water supply issues. You can see where in a historic drought or a multi-year drought, you actually run out of water. Maritime, not so bad. We can get out, Jerry, another 100 years or so, especially when we take advantage of our future use storage and make that available. Verdigris, not so bad, but demand's going down. We're still filling up with sediment in those reservoirs and verdigris, but our demand's not climbing. Same is true in the Walnut, a little sooner. In the Walnut, this is primarily the result of how El Dorado Lake factors into the scenario. But the thing we're concerned about is in the Neosho. 2012, this was based on the 2007 projection that in 5 years we could run out of water. And 2012 was a pretty bad year. It was pretty scary. Kansas River Basin, not so bad. Especially if we take advantage of our future storage we have in Tunnel Creek, Milford and Perry, we can extend that out to the middle of the century. So what are we doing about it? We're doing a reservoir sustainability initiative that looks to do 3 things: secure, protect, and restore. Secure is make sure we take advantage of all the storage we have available to us in Kansas, buy it, wrap it up, tie it up, and make it available for Kansas. We don't like the aspects of releasing water out of our reservoirs for navigation on the Missouri River, although the Corps is legally entitled to do so. Until we take advantage of that storage and purchase it, the Corps of Engineers can make that available for other purposes. We need to take care of that in the next several decades. Reallocate storage, I'm going to talk about that in a second at John Redmond, and then develop new storage sites when necessary. Protect is working those watersheds. This is the cheapest money we can spend to keep sediment out of our reservoirs. A lot of effort above Perry and John Redmond to restore stream banks, which you see on the right here. We've done some assessments in both of those watersheds and concluded that the primary source of sediment deposition comes off these river banks during high flow events. So we have another number of projects planned and underway to curtail sediment deposition. And then restore. Talk a little bit about dredging. This is into the pipe off of a dredging operation in Horton, Kansas a few years ago, where we actually pumped about 1 million cubic yards of sediment out of the lake and pumped it into a storage site upstream of the reservoir. And then we have a number of dam safety issues too that we must be concerned about. Milford and Perry, I've talked about this unfunded liability. We have to the tune of about $35 million of principal that we owe the Corps of Engineers to take full control of those.